Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kate, for asking me to speak. Thank you for being of service. Valerie, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everyone. My sobriety date is November 23rd, 2001. I have a sponsor. I have a home group. My home group is the Shepherd Group in Toronto, Ontario. I sponsor women, and yeah, Alcoholics Anonymous has completely saved my life. So I'm absolutely, completely grateful. So I will tell you a bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. First, before I start, oh my gosh, congratulations on everyone who's counting days. That's amazing. So excited that you're here. It's kind of funny because I will share about the first step, kind of where it all started. When I was kind of growing up, I was given alcohol because my parents thought that maybe I wouldn't like the taste of alcohol, and that didn't really work. I have alcoholism on both sides of my family. Both sets of grandparents, alcoholics. They made some moonshine, got in trouble. But yeah, alcohol was kind of pervasive through family gatherings and stuff like that. I never really drank a lot until I was 17 or so. But before then, I always felt different. I was like the tallest person in my grade up until I was 12. I just felt uneasy a lot, never felt comfortable in my own skin. And what ended up happening, why I ended up turning to drugs and alcohol, was because I was dancing professionally when I was in high school, and then had to stop dancing because I chose my education. And letting go of a creative outlet for me was devastating. And because of that, I needed something to kind of fill that void. And something else that alcohol gave me was a sense of community. I really searched when I was partying and using for a sense of community, like a family. And I really found that in the party scenes that I was a part of. However, I didn't really make friends with kind of normal people that people went out, partying with. Some of my friends were wanted by like the DEA and the FBI. And I just kind of I found myself in trouble all the time, just found random people that were just kind of wanted. So it was never kind of going out and having fun, and that was it. There's always like some major drama going on. And what ended up happening was I moved from Buffalo, New York to Washington, D.C., started drinking a lot, and really started having a lot of physical, in the literature for Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about having a lot of physical reactions to alcohol. And I definitely had that. Although it was fun to party and to, go places and end up places, I started having a bleeding ulcer from drinking too much. I remember being at a bar and drinking shots of Jack, and I was like, I tasted blood in the back of my throat, and I was like, that's not Jack. And so I slowly, as the literature talks about, I slowly started ruling out certain types of alcohol. And I remember telling my doctor this. I was like, I don't think I can drink dark liquor, but I think I could drink like clear liquor, and that's fine. And he was like, no, Valerie, you have to like stop drinking. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, I'll keep working on this. And what ended up happening was a few things happened that kind of got me here a bit early. I got sober when I was 22 years old, but what kind of put, I would say, the boulder in the sinking ship for me was using drugs alongside using alcohol, as well as using my seizure medication that I was taking, like a mixture of everything, right? So at 22, I remember going out a few times with friends, and I got like violently sick. And I thought someone put something in my drink. So I was like, who gets sick off of like 3 drinks? That's crazy. And when I talked to my doctor later, he's like, you pretty much produced your own anabuse and had liver failure at 22 from all of the wreckage that I had done. And at the time, a friend of mine was working, a friend that was working with me, she went to meetings, and I knew I needed help. I had tried to get help before, but I was at the point where I was going through psychosis. I was seeing things. I was kind of like tired of lying to a lot of people in my life about like how I was doing. Like I was not doing well. And this girl went to meetings, and I was like, well, what do they talk about at the meetings? And she's like, well, you tell your story. You come and tell your story. And I'm like, story time. I can handle story time. That's good. And like didn't even know it was like a spiritual program or anything. And I was like, I'm coming for story time. I'm gonna tell my story. So I came there, and I don't know, they told me like, they told me that we'll love you until you can learn to love yourself. And I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that these people were smiling, they were happy, they were not going through psychosis, they were present, things like that. So I kept coming back, and I was very, very, very defiant in the beginning. I was like, I'm going to do this thing for 30 days. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go back out. I don't know what plan I had, but I was like, I'm going to give this thing only 30 days and we'll just see. My other options were jail, institution, or death, really. I had tried to get into a psych ward. A friend of mine, I actually went with a friend who got into the psych ward, and I was pissed because when I tried to get in, they didn't let me in. They were like, you're okay, you don't need to be here. And I'm like, but how come she got in? Like it was like some secret club, and I was very angry. So I tried to get into institutions, did not work. A lot of my friends got arrested. I was the youngest out of the group that I ran with, so I did not get arrested. So that jail was kind of, that didn't actually completely happen for me. But yeah, so jails, institutions, and death pretty much. And I also nearly died a few times, so I was close to that. So that's kind of like my other options besides AA. But what I did was I stuck around. And when I came in, I was 40 pounds, no, God, probably like 50 pounds lighter than I am now. I was super sick, still going through psychosis, and I knew that something had to change. At around that same time, I ended up reading a book called the Bhagavad Gita. And in that book, it's about Krishna, and it talks about how there's a greater light, and within each and every one of us is a piece of that light. And that's how we can see the good in people. And I knew that something was keeping me alive, no matter how much destruction that I had caused, but I was still alive. And I was like, all right, I was 22, and I'm like, I'm going to figure out why I'm alive. The people who I was kind of running with didn't maybe have an opportunity, like they were older. So I was like, I have a chance to do something with my life. I'm going to figure it out. So just kept coming to meetings. I stuck with the winners in the beginning. I learned how to surf in this program. I learned how to have fun in Alcoholics Anonymous. I went to a ton of conventions and got to meet people like all over the globe from Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a sponsor who told me that you have to travel somewhere in the world by yourself. And I was like, okay, so I chose Hawaii. And I went to meetings in Hawaii and got to surf there, swim with some dolphins, and all because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the other things that kept me in the rooms, and relapse is not part of my story, but what kept me in was the fact that this disease is progressive. And I knew how bad it got when I came in, that I didn't want to find out how bad it could get if I just kept drinking and using. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do this thing and keep going. So finally, oh my gosh, I think I got a sponsor at like 4 months in. I was, again, still very, very defiant, and didn't think that the program could necessarily work for me, but I was willing. I ended up going to a different meeting. I ended up starting CMA, which is Crystal Meth Anonymous in Washington, D.C., and it's still going strong. But I find my foundation in Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I really want to talk about tonight is powerlessness, and just the first step. Because when I came in, I realized that I was completely powerless over not only drugs and alcohol, people, places, things, but also things that make me not feel. So being on my phone a ton, just numbing out, like I'm powerless over that stuff. And my life had become unmanageable. At the time, when I came in, I was going through psychosis. So I ended up doing a lot of just kind of scary things. And that was unmanageable, completely unmanageable. Sleeping with knives in my bed was like completely unmanageable. Trying to have people over to like sit on my bed. I'm like, oh my gosh, you might get stabbed. This is bad. Totally unmanageable. Not sane at all. And, when I first started doing the steps, I could relate to step one. I was like, okay, my life is unmanageable. And something that was really, really interesting is actually I was reviewing step one today with my sponsor, and something that I kind of wanted to point out was that in the 12 and 12, which when I came in also, I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I was like, well, I don't know what the 12 and 12 is, or the big book or whatever. It's a book. It's the 12 steps and 12 traditions. And it talks about how young people come into Alcoholics Anonymous and this is they're more than potential alcoholics. They were spared that last 10 or 15 years of literal hell the rest of us had gone through. And although like I had only drank and used for about 5 years, because that's all my body could handle, I'm glad I didn't have to go through, I don't think I could physically make it another like 10, 15, 20 years of drinking and using. I don't know how people do. I mean, everyone's story is completely different, but I definitely came in young, and I'm so, so thankful. I grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned how to communicate with other people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned how to be a leader. I learned how to feel comfortable in my own skin and just reach out to people when I'm not feeling great. And all of the tools in Alcoholics Anonymous are the things that I thought other people got. I thought when I was in school that other people got this like how to live life guidebook that everyone else got that I didn't get. And all of those tools I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm just really, really, really grateful, that I learned all of those things so young, and I keep learning those things. So if you're new, keep coming back. And one of the things that I love from Danny Trejo, he's sober, but he always talks about like, if you're new, just keep your ears open and just kind of and listen. Because it's really easy when someone says something that you're like, oh yeah, I heard that. And you press like, he calls it like the I know button. And you're like, I know, So just keep your ears open and just make sure you get to like a lot of meetings and just take suggestions. Because something that I'm really thankful for in Alcoholics Anonymous is that no matter what you have going through, someone else has been through it. And you get other people in the program that help you go through life stuff and not have to hurt yourself, drink, or hurt somebody else. So I'm just really, really thankful for those things. Where I'm at today, I'm really glad, Kate, that you asked me to lead, especially today, because tomorrow I'm going to try to go back into Canada to take my licensing exams to become a naturopathic doctor. And I'm powerless over Border Patrol. Like I can have all of my plan, my documentation, everything. I'm powerless over what happens if they say yes or no. And that determines my future as a doctor. So we shall see, but I get to at least reach out to my sponsor and not drink, hurt myself or somebody else today, and just get to show up and take all the action that I can and let my higher power do the rest. And yes, this is a spiritual program, which again, I learned later. So if you're new or that kind of freaks you out, the whole God thing, it's okay. It could be like a universe, higher power, energy, doorknob, group, whatever. It doesn't have to be God. But yeah, I'm just really, really thankful to be here and be in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I guess the topic would be the first step and how you live through, or what are your tools for powerless, or anything you want to share about the first step. So that is all I have. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Valerie.